A grand castle rises above the kingdom of Fornia, its towers piercing the sky. Here, every royal child at age 13 receives a gift from the goddess. Theodulf reached for the crystal ball with hope in his heart. The sphere answered with two cold words: no gift. The Fornia kingdom bathed in sunlight. In the courtyard, third Prince Theodulf drills with a wooden sword against his personal maid, Layla. Wood clashes on wood, and Theodulf is driven back with every exchange. Layla, a former S-rank adventurer now in maid's dress, presses her attack without mercy. She warns that focusing only on defense will always leave an opening. Theodulf demands to know what other choice he has. The answer is a swift strike that drops him to the ground. Theodulf collapses flat on his back, gasping. He praises Layla's impossible list of talents: swordsmanship, cooking, etiquette, and beauty on top of it all. Layla deflects the praise and reminds him the gift ceremony is tonight. The reminder lands with quiet weight. A splash of water drenches Theodulf. Second Prince Niels strolls out, smirking, claiming he missed. He mocks Theodulf's dedication to training and asks why anyone would bother when the goddess hands out power at 13. Niels raises his hand, and a pillar of fire erupts into the sky, drowning out everything else. He laughs and wonders aloud what worthless gift a talentless prince like Theodulf could possibly receive. The taunt lands like a blow. Niels walks away, still laughing. Then Layla pulls Theodulf into a sudden, tight embrace from behind. She tells him gently that if the gift truly matches its receiver, then his will surely be wonderful. Theodulf straightens up and declares he will receive something amazing tonight. The castle glows under a crescent moon. Inside, the ceremony proceeds. The announcement comes. Theodulf stares, wide-eyed and sweating, unable to believe what he has just heard. Nobles whisper that a prince who cannot receive a gift is unprecedented. Theodulf trembles, asking himself why. Niels bursts into hysterical laughter across the hall. The king's hand rests heavy on the throne, and a single word from him silences his son. King Gauss Disgard Foran stares down from his throne, telling Theodulf he is a disappointment. Niels rubs Theodulf's head roughly and proposes a solution the king had already been considering. The king agrees. Theodulf can only stare in stunned silence. The king points and declares Theodulf the lord of the land of death. Theodulf protests, describing a wasteland of noxious air, monsters, and no life whatsoever. The court watches in silence or whispers. His words change nothing. The king roars at Theodulf to stop talking back and orders him to gather his belongings. Theodulf walks away through the vast throne room, a small silhouette growing smaller. His brother places a hand on his shoulder with false sympathy. His brother leans close and tells Theodulf to enjoy surviving, because he will simply become the next king in the meantime. He laughs and walks away. Theodulf stands still, back turned, saying nothing. Theodulf departs the capital in a carriage, waving from the window as servants and citizens see him off. His father and brother are nowhere among them. He wonders where Layla is, wishing he could have said goodbye. A voice answers from inside the carriage. Layla sits across from him, calm and steady. She tells him she will be wherever he is. Theodulf shouts that they are heading to the land of death. Layla leans forward and says simply that they trust each other, and that together they can overcome anything. Layla slams her hand down on the seat beside him. She declares she will follow him, whether it is hell or the demon realm. Her eyes are unwavering. Theodulf hesitates, then asks if she is truly certain. Layla says yes, this is what she wants. He thanks her, and she smiles with her eyes closed. The journey to the land of death takes several days and multiple carriage changes. Layla reads while Theodulf watches the landscape shift. He admits to himself that having her close brings peace of mind. Still, one question lingers. Why did he receive no gift? Theodulf wonders if his origin from another world has something to do with it. In his past life, he was a salaryman, working through every night and taking his exhaustion home with him. The city lights of Tokyo blurred behind him as he dragged himself down quiet streets. He was a wage slave in every sense. He had loved a crafting game in his student days, but could never find time for it after joining the workforce. One night, hunched over his desk, his vision blurred and the street outside went dark. He woke in a vast, bright realm to find a winged goddess named Vesta spreading her arms wide in greeting. She informed him cheerfully that he had unfortunately passed away. Vesta got straight to the point. She wanted him reincarnated in another world. When he pressed for reasons, she threw up her hands and insisted the gods had their own complicated circumstances. She offered him a special power as part of the arrangement. Theodulf thought of the crafting game he had never had time to finish. He told Vesta he wanted a crafting power, just like in that game. Vesta looked surprised, then smiled. Vesta granted the wish, and a glowing cube materialized in her palm. Theodulf was reincarnated as a prince, and the ability simply waited, unused, forgotten. Living in the castle, he had never once needed to craft anything. Now, riding toward the land of death, he finally remembers. Layla wakes Theodulf gently from her lap, telling him they have arrived. He bolts upright in embarrassment. Outside, the coachman is furious at being made to wait in this forsaken place. Bare, leafless trees scratch a gray sky. Theodulf steps out and surveys the vast, barren wasteland stretching to jagged mountains. Dead trees, cracked rock, and a howling wind. He speaks the words aloud, the land of death. They have no shelter, and the night will be cold. Layla suggests they huddle together for warmth, and she is completely serious. Theodulf rules that out immediately. They will need a house. While Layla mutters to herself about the opportunities this isolation presents, Theodulf is already thinking. The crafting power. Theodulf remembers asking Vesta for it and grins. He asks Layla to chop down the nearby dead trees. She draws her sword without hesitation. Layla levels an entire stand of trees with a single horizontal slash. Theodulf stares, reminding himself she is a former adventurer. He thanks her and walks toward the fallen logs. When she asks what he plans to do with them, he tells her, "Build a house." They gather rocks and logs into a great pile. Layla hefts a massive log one-handed, startling Theodulf. He asks her to step back and let him handle the assembly. He touches the materials and takes a breath. The goddess's gift stirs. Glowing cubes drift around the pile of wood and stone. Layla watches, wide-eyed, as the materials begin to move on their own. Theodulf narrates the power in his mind. It comprehends, controls, and creates all things. It gives shape to whatever he imagines. Its name is Autocraft. A 2-story wooden house stands complete in a single thunderous instant. Theodulf pumps his fist. Layla stares at it, mouth open. Layla pulls Theodulf into a fierce hug, pressing his face against her. She insists it was strange that he could not receive a gift at the ceremony. Theodulf, completely red-faced, manages to suggest they go inside. The interior is warm and fully furnished. A fireplace, a dining table, a kitchen with stone walls, and a proper stove. Layla notes that no one would guess it was made from wood and stone alone. Theodulf agrees and opens the next door. He cannot conjure a bed without material for the mattress, so he uses cloth from his own clothing. Autocraft flares again, and a proper bed with pillows appears. Theodulf immediately throws himself onto it. Layla appears in the doorway wearing a translucent nightgown that leaves very little to the imagination. Theodulf shouts about her outfit. She explains it is simply her nightwear, and she intends to sleep. When he offers to make her a separate bed, she tilts her head and asks what he is talking about. Layla catches Theodulf before he can flee and delivers a rapid, unbroken argument. She must be close enough to protect him. Shared body heat is practical, and dividing the room gains them nothing. Theodulf surrenders. Layla lies down, and her expression softens. Layla wraps herself around Theodulf from behind. He protests that she is far too close. She tells him he is imagining it. He shouts that he is absolutely not imagining it. She repeats calmly that he is imagining it. Theodulf sighs and gives up. Their first day in the land of death ends under a dark sky. He survived it thanks to Layla and the goddess's gift. As long as she is with him, he thinks, he is sure he can. Heavy thuds shake the walls of the house. Theodulf and Layla sit up in alarm. He decides to investigate. Layla reaches for him, warning it is not safe. He steps outside anyway. His eye goes wide. A minotaur fills the doorway, club raised, face twisted in fury. It slams the weapon down and the ground erupts. Theodulf's mind races, screaming at him to run. Layla steps in front of him, spear in hand, arm around his shoulder. She asks if he is all right, then turns her glare on the monster. She tells it in a cold, furious voice that it has made a grave mistake interrupting her time with Theodulf. Theodulf calls out in fear for Layla, then stops himself. She is a former S-rank adventurer. She can handle this, but the thought that follows cuts deeper. Is he really going to let her handle every monster they encounter, every time? Theodulf steps forward and tells Layla to fall back. She shouts that he will get hurt. He ignores her and places his hand on the wooden railing of the house, already thinking. He will reuse the materials. The house dissolves in a flash of light, its planks and beams lifting into the air around floating cubes. The Minotaur stares in confusion. Theodulf closes his eyes and imagines. A memory surfaces. The sky is the limit, as long as you are creative enough. Autocraft Remake. A giant wooden axe rises from the swirling debris, mounted on a massive base. Clouds billow around it. Theodulf stands before it, arm raised. The Minotaur charges. Theodulf pulls the lever on the axe mechanism, gears turning. This gift is not an offensive type like Niels's fire magic, but that does not mean it cannot fight. Theodulf swings his arm down. The giant axe blade crashes into the Minotaur with a sound like the world splitting. Dust and debris explode outward. The monster's face goes slack. Theodulf grins. Layla watches in awe. That doesn't mean I can't fight with it. The Minotaur lies pinned under the axe, defeated. Theodulf clenches his fist in quiet victory. He remembers standing in the dark of his exile with no idea what to do. Layla suddenly tackles him from behind with a fierce hug, and he shouts in surprise. Layla lifts Theodulf off the ground, calling him incredible over and over. He sputters and protests. His heart is racing, though, and not just from embarrassment. This land, this gift, this life, it feels exactly like the crafting game he never had time to finish. Theodulf tells Layla he has found something he wants to do. He admits it will not go as smoothly as a game, and there will be ordeals. The barren landscape stretches out before them, cracked earth and dead trees as far as the eye can see. He is going to use this power. Theodulf declares his goal, to reclaim the land of death. Layla immediately scoops him up and spins him around, cheering. He demands loudly that she put him down. In the realm of the gods, the goddess Vesta relaxes in a bath, watching Theodulf through a crystal ball. Another winged figure, Athene, steps in and asks if she is watching over him again. Athene emerges from the bath wrapped in a towel, confident and unbothered. Vesta excitedly reports that Theodulf turned the god metal into a hoe. Athene insists her own chosen hero is still superior. The argument escalates rapidly and loudly into mutual accusations. Vesta is horrified at the idea of missing a single moment of Theodulf's journey. Athene looks baffled by her intensity. Vesta presses her face close to the crystal ball, watching Theodulf and Layla together, and cheers him on. Back in the land of death, Theodulf stands before a pile of rocks, with his hand outstretched, glowing cubes drifting around him. He read the kingdom's old documents last night. The noxious air only contaminated the surface. Everything deep underground should still be safe. Autocraft fires and a stone well erupts from the ground in a massive geyser of clean, cold underground water. Theodulf holds up a wooden mug and a status window confirms it. Rank C, good quality, safe to drink. Theodulf and Layla clink their mugs together. A quest notification shimmers in the air. Water obtained. Theodulf studies the well and lays out the next steps. Till, sow, water, grow. He raises his hoe and brings it down on the hard earth. It barely makes a mark. The land is vast and the soil is merciless. Theodulf collapses face down in the dirt, telling the ground he cannot do this anymore. Layla approaches with water and kneels beside him, her expression quiet and serious. Layla snatches the hoe away and orders Theodulf to rest, reminding him he already fainted once from overwork. He tries to argue. She shouts him down. He snaps to attention. He knows better than anyone what overwork costs. It killed him once already. Theodulf stares out at the endless barren field and wishes he had a tractor. He does not have the materials to build one. Layla suggests people or cattle, but there are no people here and no cattle either. She begins to offer another idea. Layla gestures toward a glowing transmutation circle and suggests simply creating workers with Autocraft. Theodulf recoils in horror. She assures him it was a joke. He does not look convinced. Then his eye catches on something and he lights up. Not a human, not cattle, a golem, a being of earth and stone that will carry out any order given to it. Theodulf lists the materials, earth, stone, and magicite. Layla's eyes go wide. Magicite is a magic-infused stone harvested from monsters, used in weapons, magical items, and as a power source. They have some from the Minotaur. Layla, feeling useless for not having more to offer, begins to unbutton her uniform. Theodulf stops her immediately, and they gather the materials instead. Theodulf spreads his arms wide as the magicite crystal floats before him, rocks and earth swirling in a rising storm of light. He narrates the golem for anyone listening, a being made from earth and stone. Normally only an alchemist can create one. But with his gift, two glowing eyes open in a massive stone face. Autocraft, golem. The creature stands taller than the house, a magicite crystal pulsing in its chest. Layla applauds. Theodulf tells the golem to get ready for fieldwork. The golem's head swings toward him, then it charges. Theodulf freezes. The golem scoops Theodulf up and sets him on its shoulder, making sounds of apparent delight. Layla draws a knife. Theodulf waves her off, insisting the golem does not seem hostile. The golem twirls. Layla is furious and jealous in equal measure. Theodulf realizes he has accidentally created a golem with emotions. Layla calls it his finest achievement yet, while demanding the golem put him down so she can carry him instead. Theodulf sighs and points at the hoe lying on the ground. He asks the golem to till the land. The golem drives a massive ornate blade into the earth and tears across the field like a force of nature. Theodulf rides on its back, shouting with delight. The land of death shakes under every step. The golem works through the day without rest. By evening it sleeps in a wooden stable, and Theodulf and Layla sit at the table sharing a warm meal. If nothing goes wrong, Layla says the food supply problem is solved. Theodulf smiles and says he is looking forward to the next few months. The next morning, Theodulf steps outside and stops cold. He stares. The crops are already fully grown. Blessed soil, it turns out, makes even out-of-season vegetables flourish overnight. Theodulf turns back to Layla and the golem with a bright wave. They stare at the abundant field with wide, stunned eyes. Theodulf and Layla walk the rows of eggplants and tomatoes, the golem looming cheerfully behind them. They slap their palms together over a basket overflowing with produce. The food supply problem is solved. The Fornia Kingdom's northern frontier, known as the Land of Death. Theodulf leans out his window in the morning light, looking over the barren expanse. Yesterday they had nothing. Today they have a house. He wonders aloud what they should do today. Chapter 2 begins. Layla carries stew and bread rolls through an arched doorway as Theodulf steps in behind her. The meal is simple, but Theodulf eats with pure joy, insisting it is incredible. Layla looks down modestly, but Theodulf will not let it go. She made something delicious from nothing but the rations they brought from the castle. Layla offers to give Theodulf her portion as well. He refuses firmly and tells her she needs to eat too. He raises a fist. Once they finish eating, they are building a farm. A steady food supply means they might eventually attract settlers. Layla agrees at once. Outside, the wind scours the cracked, dry ground. Theodulf crouches and lets the dead soil pour through his fingers. Layla explains that a disaster long ago contaminated the earth with noxious air. The kingdom tried to reclaim it and failed. Theodulf pulls out a wooden staff and says they will do everything they can anyway. Autocraft. 2 stone hoes materialize in a burst of light. Theodulf shoulders one and grins. This really is a convenient gift. They till until their arms give out, then eat a quick meal and return to spread lime and manure across the broken rows. By the time night falls, the work is done. They can only hope it is enough. Theodulf slumps over the table, exhausted beyond words. He had no idea farming was this hard. Layla sets a plate in front of him and lists the problems still ahead. Food, water, monsters. The challenges pile up like stones. Theodulf stares at the ceiling and sighs. He expected difficulties, but still. He climbs into bed. He barely has time to suggest they sleep separately before Layla is already there beside him. Layla is already asleep. It took seconds. Theodulf looks at her, and the thought arrives quietly. She was up before him, cooked for him, and worked harder on the farm than he did. He sits with that for a moment. The realization hits him hard. He is actually pretty useless here. He stares at his hand gripping the blanket, then his jaw sets. Theodulf pulls the blanket up and closes his eyes, resolving to work twice as hard starting tomorrow. The house sits quiet under the night sky. Then, in the dark, a voice calls his old name. A winged figure with a crown leans into view. His eyes snap open. He is back in the realm of the gods, sitting on a cloud-like floor. The goddess greets him cheerfully. He panics, certain he has died again. She waves the concern away and explains she only summoned his consciousness. The goddess bows deeply and apologizes. The ceremony, the exile, all of it was her fault. She could not give him a gift at 13 because he already possessed Autocraft, and giving a human 2 gifts would cause catastrophic results. Theodulf cuts her off before she can finish apologizing. The goddess describes the consequences of a second gift in graphic detail. Theodulf tells her firmly to stop. He looks at her and says he is genuinely grateful. She gave him something exciting, and that is enough. The goddess tears up and reaches into a glowing portal. She pulls out a rectangular metal bar that blazes with light and presses it into his hands. He asks what it is. She lunges forward with both arms outstretched. It is god metal, a divine material imbued with the power of the gods, normally forbidden in the mortal realm. She whispers that he can have it because he is her favorite, and to keep it secret. She taps him on the head and announces a small bonus. The goddess kisses Theodulf on the cheek and calls it a blessing. She waves goodbye and tells him she will always be rooting for him. Theodulf stands there, face burning red, steam practically rising from his head. Theodulf jolts awake in bed, shouting for the goddess. The wooden room is empty and quiet. He sits back, still blushing at the memory. Then something moves under the blanket. Layla surfaces from beneath the covers, calm and unhurried. Theodulf shouts in alarm. She mentions, without any particular urgency, that she felt something hard in the bed. Theodulf turns crimson and begins explaining frantically that it is simply a biological phenomenon and absolutely nothing else. Layla holds up the glowing god metal bar. That was the hard object. Theodulf stares at it with sparkling eyes. So the dream was real. He thanks the goddess silently. Layla tells him to look sharp because there is something he needs to see outside. The tilled field has returned to cracked, dry wasteland overnight. All their work erased. Theodulf stares at the ruined earth, and the word arrives like a door closing. Farming is simply not possible in this land. Layla shoulders a hoe and says they will till it again, try different fertilizers, test every crop they can think of. She drives the blade into the ground before he can argue. Theodulf watches her work and feels the shame of yesterday sharpen into resolve. He grabs a tool and joins her. Theodulf swings hard and tells Layla to rest, reminding her she worked all day yesterday. She protests that manual labor is her purpose. He tells her the sword practice was not for show. She looks at him with something soft in her eyes. Then he crouches and picks up a handful of dead soil. Mindless tilling is not the answer. He needs to understand what he is working with. A status window explodes into the air above the soil in his hand. Theodulf shouts in surprise. Layla cannot see it. The window reads, "Soil from the land of death, rank E, worst quality, contaminated, no crops possible. Only a divine blessing can purify it." Theodulf reads the window again. A divine blessing. He thinks of the goddess's kiss on his cheek. He looks at the god metal bar in his hand and the pieces fall into place. He grins. He pulls out the god metal and a status window blooms beside it. Rank EX, divine quality. Tools made from this metal are granted a divine blessing. Theodulf shouts that this is exactly it. Theodulf holds the wooden handle in one hand and the god metal in the other. The goddess gave him the analysis ability and the metal both, foreseeing this exact moment. He calls out, "Autocraft." Teardown breaks the old hoe apart. Then Autocraft fires again, binding the wood and god metal together in a burst of light. Theodulf holds up the divine hoe. Its head gleams with diamond-shaped cutouts and a gem at its crown. He raises the hoe and drives it into the earth. A flash of light bursts from the impact point. At first, nothing seems different. Theodulf crouches to look closer. He waits. His eyes go wide. The analysis window updates. Divine soil, rank EX, divine quality. Those who live on it receive the goddess's blessing. Excellent crops will grow. Theodulf smiles. Theodulf jumps to his feet and shouts for Layla. She spins around, startled. He tells her they can grow crops now, and she opens her arms wide. He runs toward her. Theodulf launches himself into Layla's arms and hugs her tightly. She freezes, face going completely red. He tells her it is all thanks to her and the goddess. Layla stands rigid, overwhelmed. Theodulf smiles with his eyes closed and says, "Thank you," telling her he was finally able to do something helpful. Layla whispers that she is going to overheat. A system notification chimes. Fields obtained. Blessed tomatoes hang heavy on the vine. Cabbages sit fat and perfect in the soil. Theodulf holds one tomato up and checks the analysis. Rank A, excellent quality, very delicious and nutritious. He announces he will taste it. The flavor hits him like a physical force. Umami and sweetness so intense he cannot process it. Juicy enough to mistake for meat. He stares at the bitten tomato in his hand and asks himself if this is really a vegetable. He thrusts the tomato at Layla and demands she try it. She takes a cautious bite. Her eyes go wide. They agree immediately. If it is this good raw, cooked it will be something else entirely. Layla cracks her knuckles. The kitchen fills with the sound of rapid chopping. Steam rises from pans. Theodulf sits at the table with a fork, slightly intimidated by the intensity Layla brings to cooking. She emerges from the kitchen and tells him to thank her for waiting. 4 dishes arrive: corn soup with chickpeas, 5 vegetable tempura, steamed vegetables with miso sauce, and cabbage rolls. Theodulf picks up his fork. They float. Not literally, but the flavor sends them somewhere else entirely. Giant vegetables drift around them in a blissful haze. They are both completely speechless. Theodulf thinks about the tempura's crunch, the steamed vegetables' depth, the miso pairing. Layla thinks about the corn and chickpea combination she never expected to work so perfectly. For several minutes, neither of them can speak properly. After the meal, Theodulf and Layla step outside. He calls out to the golem, now named Gorm, who stands beside a mountain of gathered logs and rocks. Layla stares at the pile, then at the golem, and asks what exactly a gorm is. Theodulf explains Gorm is the golem's name. Layla's face darkens as she asks if he is building a separate house to live away from her. He considers this, then tells her they have water now and asks if she does not want to wash away her fatigue. His hand begins to glow. Autocraft, outdoor hot spring. A steaming pool ringed with rocks appears beside a wooden bathhouse building. Theodulf and Layla stand before it, taking it in. Theodulf breathes in the steam and feels something like nostalgia. Nothing says home like an outdoor hot spring. He hands Layla a sponge gourd and a bar of bubbly soap he crafted, tells her to clean up, and heads for the men's bath. Layla stares after him without expression. Theodulf is mid-wash when Layla steps into the bath area, her hair pinned up, entirely unclothed and entirely unbothered. He shouts that this is not the women's bath. She informs him there is no need to divide the baths by gender. Layla sits behind Theodulf on the stool and begins washing his back with the sponge. She argues that assisting her master is a maid's duty, and he cannot wash his whole body alone. He insists he absolutely can. She tells him she will not obey that particular order. He demands to know what happened to their master-servant relationship. Layla presses close and explains that master and maid require a reasonable amount of physical contact. Theodulf shouts that this is far beyond reasonable. They end up in the outdoor spring together, steam rising around them. Theodulf hides his face in his hands while Layla looks up and tells him to do the same. He looks. The stars are extraordinary, dense and brilliant in a way no city ever allows. Even this dark, poisoned land cannot touch the sky. A vast canopy of stars stretches from horizon to horizon above the hot spring. Two small figures sit in the steaming water below it, very quiet. Theodulf smiles and thinks that there is no way he could have seen this in his old life or in the capital. Some things only exist out here. On a distant cliff, a silhouette with animal ears watches a plume of steam rise from the barren land below. A beautiful woman with fox ears and long hair narrows her eyes. It is not every day she sees humans in this place. Chapter 5. Theodulf and Layla spar with wooden swords in the early morning. Days have settled into a rhythm of practice, harvesting, and reading before bed. But one problem will not leave him alone: citizens. Even counting Gorm, he has two. That is not a village. He cannot sleep. He steps outside into the night air to clear his head. Theodulf stands on the porch and looks out at the desolate landscape. Anyone living in his domain would automatically become a citizen, but no one lives here. He wonders if someone might wander in by chance. Then he hears something from the direction of the fields. A massive white wolf stands before him in the moonlight, easily twice his height. Theodulf goes completely still. He stares into the wolf's eye. The creature radiates something he has felt before, something close to the goddess's aura. Then the wolf opens its mouth and tells him he need not be so wary. Theodulf's jaw drops. The wolf introduces herself as Luna. She is a Fenrir, a divine wolf, and she says it with the quiet certainty of someone who has never needed to prove it. Luna reassures Theodulf that she did not come to fight. She lowers her great head, and then, in a shimmer of light, shifts into a human shape to make conversation easier. Luna stands before him as a tall woman with wolf ears and a tail, wearing a simple dress. She apologizes for startling him and tells him she came because she has a request. Theodulf blinks and asks what kind of request a divine wolf could possibly have for him. She asks if she might have some of his vegetables. She smelled them from far away. Theodulf decides she is not hostile and brings out a basket. Luna's ears perk up. He hands her a tomato and she bites into it. Luna is surrounded by a blinding aura of delight. She has not tasted anything this good in 1,000 years. The land was not always like this, she says. A great war ravaged this place and filled it with noxious air. Theodulf asks why she stays. She says it is her home, and she cannot simply abandon it, wasteland or not. Luna licks her thumb and looks out at the vegetable fields. She tells Theodulf she is happy he has made this land bountiful again. He says her name quietly, moved. Theodulf introduces himself properly. Luna reaches out and touches his forehead. He looks up in surprise. She smiles and tells him that returning favors is simply part of being a Fenrir, and there is no harm in accepting. Luna leans down and kisses Theodulf on the forehead. She calls it a Fenrir's favor and apologizes that it is all she can offer for now. Theodulf stands completely red-faced and steaming. Luna giggles. Luna says farewell and tells him she has not been this happy in a long time. She begins to walk away across the barren ground. Theodulf calls after her and asks if she has truly lived here for 1,000 years. She confirms it without turning around. Then she pauses and looks back over her shoulder. Theodulf asks if she would consider becoming a citizen of his domain. Luna's eyes go wide. Luna teases him about wanting to reign in a Fenrir lady. Theodulf goes red and insists that is not what he meant. She smiles gently and tells him she will stop by another day. She has her own circumstances to consider. Luna promises a better gift next time and waves goodbye. She transforms back into the great white wolf and runs into the darkness. Theodulf watches her go, still flushed. He decides immediately that Layla must never know about this. Another usual day begins. Theodulf tends to small fruit trees in the orchard under a clear sky. Then something nearby makes a sound, and the narration notes quietly that today is the day his peaceful life will be turned upside down. A young woman with reddish hair leans against a tree at the edge of the orchard, pale and barely standing. She looks up at Theodulf with one eye and asks for help. She collapses. Theodulf and Layla run to her. He shouts for Layla to bring the first aid kit. Layla is already moving. The young woman wakes in a proper bed inside the house. She blinks at the ceiling. Theodulf smiles and asks how she is feeling. She introduces herself as Aisha and thanks them for treating her wounds. Theodulf gives his name as Theo and introduces Layla. Then he asks what brought her here. Aisha's eyes go wide with sudden urgency. She throws back the covers and tries to stand. Pain drops her immediately. Theodulf holds her back and calls to Layla for healing herbs. Theodulf holds the herbs, activates Autocraft, and a glass potion bottle appears in a burst of light. Aisha stares, unable to process what just happened. He tells her to drink it and she will be fine. Aisha drinks the potion and the pain vanishes. She stands, glowing faintly, and asks if Theodulf is a wizard or an alchemist. He hedges. She thanks him and immediately moves toward the door. He asks if she is really leaving already. Aisha asks about Fornos. When Layla explains the distance, Aisha learns she is standing in the land of death. She went entirely the wrong direction. She covers her face with her hands and begins to cry, saying everyone is going to be in danger if she does not hurry. Goblins are attacking Moa village. Theodulf and Layla react with shock. The goblins came in a group, and the village had no way to fight them. Aisha explains that the goblins demanded food, then more still. When the villagers said they would starve if they gave any more, the goblins changed their demand. The goblins demanded the village women instead. The villagers refused. The goblins threatened to kill them one by one until they complied. Theodulf's expression goes very still. Aisha fled to seek help and went to the Lord of Vitoa first. He told her he had no time for a backwater village and sent her away. Theodulf's jaw tightens. The Lord of Vitoa is a tyrant who taxes his subjects into ruin and ignores their suffering. Aisha prepares to leave and thanks them again. Theodulf tells her to wait. Theodulf leads Aisha into a large storehouse packed with stacked crates and lumber. She stares at the materials and asks what he plans to do with them. He tells her to watch and steps forward. Theodulf raises his arm and a massive black vortex tears open in the air, pulling every crate and plank into itself with a roar. The storehouse empties in seconds. The storehouse stands completely bare. Aisha demands to know what happened. Theodulf explains he stored everything in a pocket dimension he created with Autocraft's sub-ability, inventory. He looks at her seriously. Going to Fornos will take too long. Theodulf stands with a clenched fist, Layla at his back. He tells Aisha they are going to help the villagers themselves. Chapter 7. The group rides through a dense pine forest on Gorm's back, the golem thundering between the trees. Aisha tells Theodulf this is still dangerous. He tells her not to worry and to leave everything to him. Theodulf notices something strange. He is not scared. Courage is building in him instead of fear. He holds his hand up and a status window appears. His status screen lists 2 favors alongside Autocraft. The goddess's favor grants divinity, resistance to the demonic, and the analysis ability. The Fenrir's favor enhances his legs, grants the willpower to conquer fear, and causes wolf-type creatures to surrender unconditionally. Theodulf stares at the screen. He thanks Luna quietly. Gorm breaks from the forest. Aisha points forward. The village is right there. Her voice cuts off. Her eyes go wide with terror. Goblins swarm the village, small and vicious and numerous, driving the villagers back toward their homes. Theodulf watches them, and his expression hardens. Theodulf orders Gorm to charge straight into them. He tells Layla and Aisha they will jump on the count of 3. Aisha shouts that this is insane. He counts anyway. All 3 of them leap from Gorm's back and fall through the air together. Aisha screams. Theodulf reaches out his hand and pulls cloth from his inventory. They land in a soft cushion with a heavy impact. They land in a heap, Aisha on top of Theodulf and Layla beside him. All 3 go red. Nobody speaks for a moment. Aisha scrambles back, apologizing. They look up. A ring of goblins surrounds them on every side, clubs and knives ready. Theodulf turns to Aisha and tells her to trust him. Theodulf looks back over his shoulder with a steady expression and declares he will save the villagers. Aisha's heart does something unexpected. Then the goblins charge. Theodulf and Layla run forward together. He shouts for her to match him. She draws her sword, blade glowing, inventory full open, Autocraft, intermediate Orstein blade technique. Hundreds of swords materialize in the air above Theodulf and rain downward. Layla swings in a wide arc, and vertical beams of light tear through the goblin ranks. The combined attack detonates across the field in a cascade of impacts. Light and force scatter goblins in every direction. The surviving goblins flee, shouting that they must warn the boss. Theodulf calls Layla back and tells her not to chase them. The villagers come out slowly, looking around in disbelief. A woman approaches Theodulf and asks who they are. Theodulf starts to give a false name, then stops himself. If he wants their trust, he cannot lie to them. He places a hand on his chest and introduces himself as Theodulf Forayan, third prince of the Fornia kingdom and lord of the land of death. Aisha stares. The villagers stare. Theodulf braces for the worst. Then Aisha starts shouting that he is a real prince, and the villagers surge forward with excitement and gratitude. They bow. He tells them firmly there is no need for ceremony. But the goblins mentioned a boss, and that means the danger is not over. Theodulf thinks about the retreating goblin's words. The boss is probably somewhere in this forest. In a dark cave nearby, a large goblin listens to his terrified subordinate's report and sneers at their cowardice. The goblin king executes a fleeing subordinate with a single stroke. He turns to the rest of his horde, glowing eyes burning, and tells them they will go put the humans in their place. Chapter 8. Village Chief Galad Moel bows to Theodulf and thanks him for saving everyone. Theodulf insists he only did what was right. The chief reaches into his robe anyway. Galad produces a piece of orichalcum, a rare metal so valuable that even a palm-sized piece fetches hundreds of gold coins. Layla goes pale with shock. A voice shouts from across the crowd. A young man named Jack grabs the chief by the shoulder and demands to know why he is handing over the village's ancestral treasure to royals. He insists there has to be a catch. Royals do not risk their lives for commoners without a reason. Jack tries to rally the other villagers. Then a young woman steps forward and shouts him down. She tells everyone that Theodulf helped her when she was a complete stranger, and he saved all of them. She tells Jack not to speak ill of him. The villagers are torn. Galad presses the orichalcum into Theodulf's hands and says it does not matter anymore. Their village will end soon regardless. Theodulf asks why. The chief says he has already noticed, has he not? The Goblin King is in this forest. He is smarter and stronger than any ordinary goblin, capable of defeating minotaurs and Kijin alike. The chief explains this with the flat certainty of someone who has already accepted what is coming. Galad tells the young to flee while the elders stay behind to slow the goblins down. Jack refuses outright to abandon anyone. Theodulf agrees with him. Theodulf shouts that he will save everyone and leave no one behind. The chief points out that goblins already surround the village, cutting off escape. Running is not an option. Theodulf tells him they are not running. They will fight. And to do that, they are going to fortify the village. Jack remembers his father telling him that strong men protect the village, and his childhood promised to do the same. Now, watching Theodulf work, he calls him a royal brat with ulterior motives, but the words feel hollow even to him. Autocraft fires. A watchtower erupts from the ground in an instant. Jack stares up at it with his mouth open. Theodulf asks the villagers for more wood and iron. They offer him everything they have, even their houses and tools. He thanks them and bows. Protective walls rise along the perimeter. Theodulf pushes further, calling for more. Then his eyes blur and his legs give out. He hits the ground. Aisha runs to him. Aisha kneels beside him and urges him to rest. Overusing his gift has a cost. Theodulf shakes his head. There is no time. He must do everything in his power. He shouts that he will protect this village. Jack watches from a distance. Jack remembers the goblins charging and his own feet refusing to move. He remembers Theodulf running toward the danger instead. He watches Theodulf being helped upright by Aisha and calls out to him. Jack asks simply what Theodulf needs him to do. Theodulf looks at him and says he has heard Jack is the best fighter in the village. He holds out a spear. Jack grips the spear and says he does not trust Theodulf one bit and is only doing this for the village. Theodulf thanks him. Then he notices Aisha staring at him. She waves her hands frantically and insists she was not looking at him at all. Aisha reports that the children and elderly have been evacuated. She asks if there is anything else she can do. Theodulf tells her things are going smoothly with the villagers helping. He runs off to the next task. Aisha watches him go. Theodulf works alongside the villagers at the defensive wall, directing and crafting without pause. Aisha watches from a distance, her expression soft. A massive foot crushes the earth at the tree line. The Goblin King strides through the forest at the head of his horde, a jagged blade over his shoulder, and announces that their fun little slaughterfest is about to begin. The Goblin King mutters about his cowardly subordinates as he leads the horde toward the village. He plans to kill the men and take the women. Then he stops at the tree line and his face changes. A stone wall with wooden spikes stands where the undefended village used to be. Villagers man the watchtower with bows. A line of spear holders waits below. The Goblin King demands to know what this is. Theodulf stands atop the wall and tells the goblins to withdraw. If they do, nothing will happen to them. But if they take one more step forward, every last one of them goes down. The Goblin King orders the charge. The horde screams forward. Theodulf reaches back and prepares himself. A goblin is suddenly crushed by a falling object before he can reach the wall. Another looks up in confusion. Theodulf stands behind a row of cannons on the platform, arm raised, and tells everyone the battle has begun. Goblins reach the wall and try to climb. Arrows drop them from the watchtower. The ones who make it to the top find 5 spear tips waiting for them. The villagers hold. Theodulf cheers them on. The Goblin King watches his horde fail and reaches for his massive sword. The Goblin King destroys the wall with a single blow. Stone and wood explode outward. Theodulf shouts, Autocraft, and cushions materialize beneath the falling villagers. He orders the front line to retreat to the shelter. The Goblin King looks down at Theodulf and Layla and identifies Theodulf as the king directing the battle. He asks if Theodulf knows the game ends when the king falls. Then he turns to Layla and tells her to become his woman. Layla refuses without hesitation, telling him her heart belongs to someone else. The Goblin King grins and says he will simply kill that person first. He orders his goblins to capture her without damaging her face. Layla drops into a combat stance and draws her sword. Layla's shining silver lotus tears through the goblin swarm in a wide arc. But a dark arm seizes her from behind, and the sheer weight of numbers drags her down. The Goblin King tells his goblins to hold her there. Layla realizes she was baited. The Goblin King provoked her and created the situation he wanted, separating her from Theodulf. Layla tells Theodulf to retreat to Gorm. He shouts back that the villagers will be in danger. He reaches out his hand and glowing cubes drift around his fingers. Theodulf declares he will defeat the Goblin King right here. A massive stone block materializes above the monster and drops. The Goblin King smashes the block aside without effort. Theodulf rolls clear of the debris and calls Autocraft again. A large wooden ballista assembles beside him. He fires. The Goblin King catches the bolt in one hand and tosses it away. He tells Theodulf to stop playing games and looms over him with his sword raised. The Goblin King swings and the shockwave tears across the ground. He expects silence. Instead, he feels like he hit something, but Theodulf is nowhere in front of him. He sweats. Theodulf is directly above him, falling fast with his sword drawn. The Goblin King looks up in total shock. Theodulf had stacked earth blocks under his feet in an instant, launching himself above the slash. Now he falls toward the exposed monster below. 5 earth blocks, created instantly, lifted him above the attack. The Goblin King swung at empty air. Theodulf descends for the counter. Theodulf grips his sword with both hands and thinks of every early morning spent sparring with Layla. Elementary Orstein blade technique. Silver strike. The blade shatters against the Goblin King's skin. The monster looks down at Theodulf with contempt and kicks him across the field. Theodulf skids across the dirt and slams into a tree. He pushes himself up on trembling arms. The Goblin King walks toward him and announces checkmate. A wooden staff drives into the Goblin King's shoulder, stopping him cold. Jack stands between them, jaw set. Theodulf stares up at him. Jack tells Theodulf the frontline fighters explained what was happening. The Goblin King dismisses Jack as a pawn and tells him not to interfere. Theodulf watches the Goblin King raise his sword toward Jack and breaks into a run. The Goblin King swings at Theodulf instead. He had been targeting the boy all along. Theodulf runs, but the attack is too wide, too fast. He thinks of the earth block trick but knows the same move will not work twice. A translucent fox-eared figure appears beside him and touches his back. A status window flickers. Fenrir's favor, enhanced leg strength. Theodulf's feet begin to glow. If the Goblin King expects him to go up, he will go down instead. Theodulf dashes under the swing at a speed that leaves the Goblin King staring. He gets behind the monster. The Goblin King points out that the sword is still too blunt to cut him. Theodulf thinks of the village treasure. He is sorry, but he has to use it. Autocraft takes the orichalcum and the Goblin King's jaw drops as the village's ancestral rock becomes a gleaming sword in Theodulf's hands. Jack watches in the background, stunned. The chief had said it was a guardian deity that would protect them in their hour of need. Theodulf drives the orichalcum sword upward in a silver strike. The blade cuts clean through the Goblin King's skin. Dark blood sprays into the air. The Goblin King falls. A dark-haired girl stands over the creature, panting hard, sword tip on the ground. She wobbles. She confirms to herself barely that she beat him. Theodulf places a hand on her shoulder. She looks back surprised. He tells her she did good. She thanks him and says the same back. They bump fists. Theodulf calls out to the shelter. A young girl in a hat bursts out and throws herself at him with a shout. Layla watches with wide, alarmed eyes. The dark-haired girl looks toward the building as more voices call out. The young girl cries into Theodulf's shoulder, thanking him over and over. The dark-haired girl watches with a gentle expression. Layla turns away, quietly. The villagers emerge into the light and the celebration begins.